We will talk to Bill Simmons, great sports writer, podcaster, and he is the executive producer of the HBO docuseries Celtics City. The history of the team from their founding to the 2024 championship. So there's a lot of great interviews in there, a lot of great footage, old archival footage. And it premiered back on March 3rd. It can be streamed on Max with new episodes debuting Monday nights through April 28th as we make way for Bill Simmons joining us on the program. Bill, how are you? How's morale?
I'm great. Great to see you.
Great.
It's been a long time.
Yes, it has. Better game, college basketball, NBA, as far as the aesthetics of watching it.
Well, you're asking the wrong person because I love the NBA and college hoops. I have trouble with March Madness. I just have trouble with, especially what I grew up with in the 80s, where you felt like you got to know these guys over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. And this year, especially now in the NIL era, it's just, it's like a fantasy draft where you just reset the rosters every year. So I think that combined with the style of play, like I went to 2 NBA games this weekend, Lakers Bulls, and the Bulls were incredible. OKC Clippers last night, which was like a round 3 playoff game. And I was really impressed by the Clippers, how good they were. And you go to games like that and you watch college and it just, to me, just feels like such an inferior product. So I think unless you went to one of these colleges, you grew up rooting for them, or you just have a major gambling problem. It's fine. March Madness is fine, but I'm still taking the NBA.
When it comes to awards, and I got to vote on these, I'm sure you probably got to vote on NBA awards, and the MVP is always a tricky one. And I got criticized because I didn't vote for Barkley and didn't vote for Malone when they won. I voted for Jordan, I think, 7 or 8 years in a row.
History has remembered you fondly for that one, I think.
It wasn't a stretch to do that, but like Joker's not going to win the MVP, but he is the best player in the NBA. SGA, who didn't play well in the game, the win against the Clippers, is going to win. I just don't know. Do we follow the Academy Awards? Hey, it's your turn, your time to win something. Are we doing that with awards, or have we been doing that with awards?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably put myself in the highest percentile of people who stupidly care about this the most. Like even when I wrote my basketball book, I did a whole chapter about the MVP and tried to correct every injustice every year on the pod. The last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, I'm trying to grind it out and make sure you get to the right place with somebody. I think the difference this year is SGA is incredible. And I actually think he's now becoming a little bit underrated. Like he's having, I think, one of the best scoring seasons in the history of the guard position. Like what he's doing this year, you can put against any Jordan regular season. You can put against, it's as good as any Kobe season or better, except for 2006. It's up there with West. It is one of the best guard scoring seasons of all time. And he's doing it night after night after night. And the thing that I care about, and right now with 12 games left, I think I'm going to vote for him. The thing I care about is every time he goes against whoever one of the other best guys in the league is, he's either better than them or is equal to them, right? So that matters. The fact that his team is the best team in the league and he's the centrifugal force of that matters too. The fact that I haven't seen really anybody stop him. Even last night, the Clipper game, I know what his box score was, but I went to the game. Like it was just one of those nights. Like the ball was just rolling around the rim, bouncing out. Like he couldn't buy a break the whole night. He was still getting the shots he wanted. So I think he's been awesome. I am probably the number one Joker cheerleader at anyone in the mainstream media. I just think he's one of the best 10 to 12 players of all time, and he's certainly the best player of this generation. But, I don't know if OKC wins 69, 70 games and SGA is going to average 33 a game and have 50, 30-point games and do all the stuff he's doing, I think it's a fair one. I think it's the right vote.
You think Joker's already one of the 12 best players in the history of the game?
I think he's at least moved into that class, and this is another thing I probably care about too much, and I redo my pyramid every year with the tiers, and I'm a huge loser. But he's at least in that group with Hakeem and Shaq and Moses and in that kind of territory. And I think when you're talking about the best offensive players year after year who can both get their stats and make everybody better, to me, he's in the Bird Magic area offensively. And I mean, you know me well enough, Dan, to know like I wouldn't say that lightly. But when you think like how he can elevate his teams, the stats that he just gets to night after night, like just the experience of watching him day to day, where it's like he'll just put up a 35, 20, and 15. And we're like, whoa, big game for the Joker last night. We're almost like numb to it at this point. So yeah, I think he's one of the best offensive players I've ever seen. So yeah, could he win 3 MVPs in 5 years or 4? I'm not sure it matters. I just think he's in the combo now historically.
Yeah, we're talking to Bill Simmons and the show, HBO docuseries on Max, Celtics City. When did the idea first start, the genesis of it?
It was might have been before COVID or right around COVID when we found out the Lakers were doing a multi-part thing for somebody. And, the Boston thing kicked in immediately, got competitive. And we're like, well, we got to come up with a better one than theirs. Theirs is already come and gone. But, I got together with Connor, who I created 30 for 30 with, and just try to figure out like, man, if one of these franchise things was ever going to work, because obviously there's going to be a few of them that are done. This is probably the one with the highest upside because you can tell the story of 8 decades of the NBA. You can tell a lot of things about America through the Celtics, whether you talk about race or drugs or business or the evolution of the NBA, things like that. And then the characters. And I found out, and I'm sure you felt the same way during The Last Dance. I was shocked by how little people knew about anything before the 2000s about the NBA. It's almost like most people felt like the NBA started when Shaq and Kobe had the three-peat. So like they had the Rodman episode in The Last Dance, and the people in my life were like, wow, that Dennis Rodman, he was crazy, huh? And I'm like, what? Like, you don't remember this? So we just felt like there was such an upside with the whole Celtic story going from Cousy to Russell and, all the way through the 70s, and how it intersected with Boston was a big thing because it's a story about the Celtics and the city. But now, like the one tonight, it's really that there's 3 straight kind of Bird era episodes in a row. And the one tonight is about Boston and Philly in the early 80s and Bird kind of ascending. And it's like, this is the first one where I feel like if you're probably under maybe 60, or maybe you're over, I don't know, over 25, you're going to remember all the aspects of this. And then for people under 25, I think they're going to enjoy it. So it's been an amazing project to work on.
I don't know how tricky this was for you. Maybe that's not the right word, but you want to get a mass audience with this. That it's regional with the Celtics, but you want to make it national. The race part of it with Bill Russell and the Celtics is very, very powerful. But how do you factor in making this for maybe mass appeal or the casual basketball fan?
Yeah, you're trying to do both. And it's also an old school documentary. There's not a lot of these long multi-parters anymore. And the HBO model, I think, actually favors us because the one of the ways documentaries and docuseries have changed this decade is most of the places dump all of them at once, right? And you just binge it, and you're binging it and you're also doing something else. And, you can just zoom through something and whatever. Maybe you watch 6 episodes of something and you really only concentrate for half of it. I think in this case, like, we're making 9 one-hour movies here. We're trying to tell a bigger story than just, hey, here's the Celtics and wasn't this game incredible? Like, we're really trying to dive into some stuff and especially how a franchise intersects with a city and a country, So I think for us, I felt this way when we did, the first 30 for 30s and some of the other stuff I worked on. Like, if something's good enough, people are going to find it. So I think that was our mission this whole time. Can we make this good enough that somebody is going to be suspicious of it and say maybe, I don't need to see that. I don't really care about the Celtics. Like, if you care about basketball, you're going to enjoy watching this. Like, and I think that's the spot we got to.
But also, I go back to the first time I went to the Boston Garden. So I'm working at CNN. Celtics are in the NBA Finals. And all of a sudden, you walk into that building. And okay, it's aesthetically not pleasing. It was, a dump. But you felt like it was a stage, like it was a Broadway
Yeah.
stage. When I was growing up, 76ers Celtics on Sunday afternoon, the way the building was lit, it just looked like a Broadway show. And
Yeah.
I could not wait to shoot hoops on that floor. And I would go there 3 hours early. Bird would be in there, whether he was shooting or he'd run around the upper deck. And I would just wait until he was done. And if that ball was out there, I went
You're
over.
grabbing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I was very fortunate that, you had Magic and Bird being there when Magic hits the sky hook. And so when I see it, it brings back the memories of, and maybe I didn't appreciate it as much. I loved it. But even looking back, that was unbelievable rivalries, unbelievable talent. And the personalities, the characters, the all-time greats that came out of those matchups, I loved reminiscing about it, and it gave me. I'd look forward to the Bird episodes because I got to spend a lot more time with Larry than I thought I was going
Right.
to. But that was the fun part of it. I don't know when you first said, "I love this. This team is me. It's my DNA."
Yeah, I mean, my dad got one season ticket in the 73-74 season. He's had him ever since. So I think he's like the fifth oldest season ticket holder. So he would carry me in when I was a kid. And then eventually we got two tickets right before Bird showed up. But we went to the triple overtime game, which we covered in episode 3.
Yeah.
And I think one of the cool things about the 70s and 80s, first of all, in the 50s and 60s, basketball it wasn't a minor league sport, but it was the fourth sport. Baseball was the biggest. Football was right there behind it. And honestly, hockey was bigger than basketball. They created basketball because the hockey owners wanted to fill their buildings on the days where they didn't have hockey. So it took, 15, 20 years. They had a bunch of weird racial quotas and a bunch of like pretty unseemly stuff. And it wasn't really until the mid 60s that the league started becoming the league. You go into the 70s and it was still pretty rinky dink for the most part, right? They had the one TV contract. The ABA showed up. So some of the players weren't even in the league. And, in that triple OT game, it started at 9:17 at night. The Boston fans said they're all blue collar fans. They'd been out since 4 in the afternoon and they're hammered. And it was they charged the court after second overtime. One guy jumped the referee. Like that's just what the era was like. And then as you go to the 80s and the 90s, the league starts to shift. Jordan shows up, All-Star Weekend, Stern, Bird versus Magic. And it kind of rounds into where we end up in the 90s. But it took a long time to get there. And there were people like us that really loved the league, but it was a contrary opinion. To tell somebody your favorite sport was the NBA, it was like, what, really? And now it seems like they have probably the most famous players out of any sport. It's not the biggest league, but I think they have the most famous players.
Who was your favorite interview in this docu series?
I was stunned by how good Robert Parrish was. I think when you do these, and we interviewed like 100 people, you're always hoping for a couple ones you didn't expect. And Parrish was somebody who was pretty quiet when he played. They nicknamed him the Chief after the guy in the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest who never talked. But he just had a lot of like 40 years of pent up stuff to say, and he was really charismatic. And you do these things, right? Part of the issue we had was a lot of the people from the first 3 episodes weren't alive anymore, and so you're cheating with different old footage. And our director, Lauren Stoll, did a great job kind of weaving footage of people who weren't around anymore and making it seem at least a little lively. And once we get into the 80s, then we have everybody, so like Mikhail Parrish, we got Larry, all these guys are great. And then, we got KG was probably the last one we got because I think he was a little maybe suspicious of the thing. And you're not going to believe this, but KG's interview is amazing. That was the other one where he's just like that at all times. So you just turn the camera on and he's KG.
But Isaiah didn't want to do it.
No, and I know Isaiah, and I knew why he didn't want to do it. I think he felt, I think The Last Dance and some other sports documentaries that have happened over the last 10 years, nobody wants to be in somebody else's doc when they're like the other team in the sports movie, right? Like when the first 30 30 for 30s we did. We get anybody, and people are like, hey, we're doing this documentary. Can we come film you? Sure. And that started a shift in the mid 2010s. And I get it. Like if somebody was making a documentary about ESPN, I don't know if I'd want to be in it. I don't know how, and I'm sure you would feel the same way. Like, wait, how am I going to be portrayed? So I get it. But it also makes these things a little bit harder and increase the degree of difficulty. So we didn't have Barkley either. Barkley will talk to a lamppost about basketball, but some of the people that are on the other side, they just don't want to do it.
Congrats on it so far, Bill. Good to catch up with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks.
That's Bill Simmons. He is bringing you Celtic City. He's the executive producer, HBO. And tonight, another episode, and it'll be going through April 28th. We'll take a break. Arkansas head coach John Calipari next.